Okay, today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to paint a simple cup, and I'm going to kind of walk you through the steps that I would use to paint that cup. If some of you need help painting glass or objects like that, there is a video for that, and I will link it in the project description. So let's get started. So some of you guys were having a little bit of trouble just drawing a basic cylinder object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my arm loose from the shoulder, the elbow, the whole thing up off the table, moving loosely, not just drawing with my hand, with my arm fixed. I'm not going to get a good shape that way. And I kind of drew my oval a little flat because I'm kind of looking at the side of my cup. Then I'm going to make these lines, make sure these lines are vertical and oriented to the paper, and make sure that they're parallel to each other. So some of you guys, they're not so parallel, and I also want to make sure that this axis running through here is at a 90-degree angle to the side, to the center, to all of that. Some of you guys were having problems with that, where you draw a base and it sticks out down here, but then up here it sticks out, so you don't have symmetry in the object. Okay, and you want to have symmetry in the object. One way to do that is to draw a line across and down so that you could figure out how to fit it within that form so that they kind of like both sides hit those points at the same time. So that's something you could consider how to build these things, and then you'll have the same negative spaces and stuff. And then the bottom of my mug, a lot of you have this flat bottom, really flat, or it's got corners on it. So I'm going to draw another oval, but this time I'm going to let my oval open up a little bit because the bottom of this mug is lower in my eye line than the top. So I'm looking more down at it. It starts to become more of a circle. So you could imagine looking at a quarter from the side. If I look at that quarter from the side, it's like a straight line. And if I look straight down on it, it's a big open circle. So as I move that quarter down, that circle opens up more and more until eventually it becomes a full circle. So that's something to think about. And then the handle. So my handle is symmetrical. So I'm going to literally build it in a rectangle like this. And I'm going to think about how these curves are symmetrical. So I want to use those boxes to help me. I'm going to draw it a little darker than I normally would so you could see it better. So I'm going to use those boxes. That's where my curve is going to go from one corner to the next, down the handle, and then I'm going to mimic the thickness of my handle all the way through. Now, my object is being hit by light. So I'm going to erase this. I'm going to erase these lines, this axis line, all these guidelines. I'm going to get rid of those. All the lines that help me draw it, I don't need them anymore because I've got it pretty much drawn out. But I did forget one thing. This cup's not made out of paper, it's got a thickness. And probably if I had a source picture, I could tell that the top here was catching light. And that double line shows the thickness of the actual mug. So you could actually see like this part of the mug here is got a thickness, and that's going to catch light around the top. So let's pretend my light is coming this way. So my shadow will be down this side. Thinking about how my lines could be curved more to support the shape of my object a little bit. And if the light's coming this way, on the inside of the cup, it's going to hit the inside here. That means that my shadow is going to be on the opposite side here. So I've got shadow running down this part, shadow on the inside, shadow under here, the light's coming from above, shadow along the side of this. So I'm just imagining, and the bottom here. So I'm just imagining the light's coming this way, what would it hit, how would it hit it, okay, and I'm going to build my thing that way. I'm also going to come from the bottom, And I'm not going to draw some shape like this because it doesn't really relate to my object and it's too flat. So I'm going to take from the bottom, I might take a mark and bring it out here real flat because it's sitting on the table. Erase that bad line there. And I don't want my shadow to be too outliney, and I want to use horizontal strokes to help lay it flat on the table. Things that are flat on a surface, you should use horizontal strokes for. And then, because my edge shouldn't be hard, I'm going to soften it with my finger. In the paint, the equivalent way to do this is to mix the background color with the shadow color and let them blend softly at the edge. And I'm just going to push this line right here a little bit, okay? So, I've got my cup drawn. I'm ready to go. Now I'm going to get some paint. I am right-handed. I got my palette set up on my right side. I got my water set up on my right side so that I can get my paint and go like this. So some of you, when you've been painting objects, you've just been like painting the whole thing one color. Real flat. Not a lot of control. I mean, not a lot of shading or light hitting the object. It all just is one color. And you'd say, like, but that's the color it is. Well, the truth is, we can't see that. All we can see is the color that's reflected of the light. So if there was a blue light, it wouldn't matter what color it is. The only color you'd be capable of seeing was blue because the light was blue. Now that doesn't mean that the object's blue, but what it means is the only way you could represent that object in a painting would be by making it blue. And then some of the same people that are doing this flat thing, they're doing stuff like this. They're drawing a line of black here, and maybe like a really hard, crispy shadow. Notice when my paint starts pulling and tearing like that, I happen to know that I don't have enough paint or I need to mix a little water in. Okay, so some people did that. It's not a terrible way to think about painting, but it's not the way we're going to think about painting as beginning painters. So we're going to think about how to learn how to really paint stuff wet into wet and model. So my object is green. So obviously that blue really took over. So I need some more of this yellow, because remember, yellow's a mouse and blue's a dog, and we want a fair fight. It's not such a real intense green, so I'm going to add red. I overdid it, coming back with the other two colors, and the blue, so that I can bring this back together to the color I want. So I'm going to go and paint this on in stripes down. My brush is trying to support the form of the mug, so I'm trying to curve them ever so gently. I'm thinking about how a cylinder has like it's flat all the way down. I'm making sure to go up to the line and even, feeling okay crossing the line a little bit. Not leaving empty space behind. So I'm going to push that back with my background color. I'm not going to get too hung up on trying to get it exact right now. It allows me to be faster now, more efficient, and then when it really matters, I'm going to fine tune that background. Okay, add a little white to this while it's still wet. Now I did make a mistake. I should have painted the handle here so that I had both paints ready to go, but I wanted to show you some of that wet and wet. So I'm painting it and I'm letting it blend into the wet paint, and I will mix up some more of the dark color for the handle, but also I might bring it into the mug itself. So the paint's still wet, so I can kind of blend these colors together, the dark picking up by the lighter color. I get a softer transition, thinking about vertical stripes of color in a cylinder, and then horizontal strokes to support that the cup kind of moves around in space. Take it to the next level. I'll put another lighter band of color running through here. I didn't go all the way to the edge. I left a little space because that's what I am observing. Blending this out more. Now it's getting a little bit dry, and I'm having a hard time getting my darker color to mix. So I'm going to try and mix that color back. But I don't want a lot of white in my brush when I do it, so I've got to make sure I clean out my brush somewhat. Okay, go. I got to remember when I'm working how I built these colors in the first place, so that when I need them again, I have them. Some of this paint was kind of thin. I'm letting it get thicker now. A little more decisioning. Where I'm making choices that I'm going to stick with. Blending those colors wet into wet. Adding these darks on here to the handle. I really want those connections so bad that I kind of painted over my good light work here, just to make sure that there's no gap. That's how badly I want there to be no gap or white space on my paper. Okay, and then in here, letting the paint extend over the line. Okay, and then I'm going to come in here with this light color, wherever I said the light was hitting, painting it down. I'm trying to soften the inside edge. I might have to come back in here with the light color. Maybe the brush I'm using is a little chunky for what I'm trying to do. One more time, I'm going to mix this dark. Don't want to get too hung up on moving slow. That's a mistake that you will regret, because what's going to happen is you're going to get behind more and more if you move too slow. Letting these colors mix, wet into wet. Okay, so now you can see I've got like these transitions of light moving across the object. It's all different, it's not just all one color, it's a lot of colors. Now I'm going to go super light on this green. And I'm probably going to switch brushes to a simple, or at least a small flat, if that's the right brush, but not a big flat. Okay, I need a little water to get my paint moving. I'd have to clean that shape up with some more of that shadow color. Thankfully, I've still got some. Yeah, because the paper I'm using is getting a little bumpy from curling up from the paint. So sometimes it'll give me a shape that kind of pushes back, and I'll just have to push back. Also going to hit this color up here, highlight, maybe a little touch there, second hit there, and maybe a little bit here. Fixing this where I ran past it with the handle. My handle's kind of coming out the back, so I don't see the connection point. in this. And I'm going to get this dark color, clean this edge shape. Now I went too far into here. And you might actually find where there's light inside the mug, at some point that the crispness of the edge, the clearness of the edge, like back here, might be less obvious. Colors might be more the same. I wiped a little paint up my brush so I could kind of just blend the amount of color that's on the paper. Come in with a little whitish, really whitish. Clean the top of this a little bit. It's not white, it's still that green, but it's a little whiter. I kind of overpainted it a little. I'm just going to use a clean dry brush, or mostly dry brush, to smooth some of this in. Clean some of it up. Pop a highlight. There's some reflective stuff going on my mug. Right here, the light hitting it. Right here is a little light hitting it. So I want to really just think about, at the end, those crisp, clean lights. But I'm not done. I've got to think about what my object is around, and so I could clean up these outside edges where I let it be messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a little bit of a yellow, pale brown. I'm going to need more yellow. It's better to add more paint if you need it than to throw a bunch of paint away. So brown is orange mixed with a little bit of blue or black. So I'm going to use black because it'll go a little faster for me. And I got a good color. So what I'm going to do is, this is my good shadow color. I'm going to just paint this on nice and thick because I want to be able to blend it into the background color if I can. I'm overpainting the shadow a lot. I'm trying to get a transitional edge where like the shadow fades out. It's crispest close to the object, and then the further away from the object it gets, it starts to fade out. Okay? So then I'm going to finish the table. I'm going to add a little more yellow. I'm going to add some white. This is like the color of my table. It's a little too green, I think. Might have to mess with that color a little. Add a little red into it. Again, overlapping this color. Painting over that line of the bad shadow that I keep thinking is a hair on my paper. I keep trying to grab it. I saw that earlier. Going right to the corner. That shadow. Try and get these to blend a little. I will have to push back with that dark color to get it how I want it. Yeah, I did that. Look, the edge here is rough because I overpainted. Nice clean edge. I will need to mix this color again. It's okay if it's not the exact color because that's how life is. Having it be the exact color everywhere makes your painting look flat. So it's not like it makes your painting better. So next time I would try and get in this hole a little before I paint the sides so that like the color, the way the colors aren't the same transcends the space, almost like the light hitting the table behind the cup is consistent instead of it looking like I filled in a shape. Trying to get rid of all the white paper here and reshape this with a clean edge. Right now I'm not using the water method. I'm using the extra paint method. be working for me. And if I run out of paint on one edge of my brush, you might notice that sometimes I turn it and use the other edge of the brush to get it. Also, I had like some inconsistent paint mixing. So over here, there's like a dark line of paint that was in my brush unmixed, and it just made this really dark brown line. And I don't want my object to have lines in it. So I don't want any of these lines or outlines. I want my painting to just be made up of colors and shapes. There's very few lines in real life, so I want very few lines in my painting. Drawing's a different creature, although even in drawing, certain kinds of drawing, our aim is to just get rid of all the lines. Try and make it look as much like reality as possible. But again, that's only some kinds of drawing. I feel like I went a little too hard on that highlight and it's still wet, so I'm going to kind of, with a dry, cleanish brush, dryish, cleanish, I'm going to kind of soften that a little, spread it out a little. Okay, so you can kind of see the ridges of the paper because paper's not meant for this. I actually am fine with the shadow. It's not that blended out, but I kind of think it's fine. Maybe I'll make a little more of that dark. That was that red, yellow, and black. Gives that vibe. It's fading out there. Darken it a little bit. Come even closer to the object. The core of the shadow. Too much paint on the brush to really blend those. Oops. So I'm going to get it off. Okay. So that's just an idea of how to paint a simple object where you're getting a good gradient, you're thinking about light, you're using the background, you're overpainting the lines so that I don't have any white spaces between my object and the background, thinking about the shadow being a darker version of this color, not some random gray color. So yep, there you go. There's some things to work with. I'm also going to post my 45 minutes worth of work on my painting. You're supposed to work for 60 minutes, so you should be getting further than I am. If you feel like you're working slow, you've only got one more class after this class, and they're 75-minute periods. So if you feel like you're working slow and you're not going to finish by the end of the class after this, you're going to have to put some work in outside of class and get yourself moved forward.